The Ultimates #1 leaps forward 6 months after last year's Ultimate Invasion to find Tony Stark, aka Iron Lad, and Doom developing a plan to recreate a world of heroes before the Maker escapes his prison. We're going to talk about it right here in our review of the Ultimates #1 from Marvel Comics. See you in 3. Welcome back to Comical Opinions. This is our review of the Ultimates #1. Now you might be thinking, wait a minute, Comical Opinions does indie stuff and mid-sized publishers and small publishers. Why are they reviewing a Marvel comic? Well, that's a good question, because if you're subscribed to our YouTube channel, you may have seen that we put up several surveys talking about comics that are coming up, and we asked you if there was one Marvel comic we reviewed this week, just one, what would it be? And this one is the winner. So if you want to get in on those surveys and dictate what comics we review in the future that are from either Marvel or DC, and on the DC side we did Batman #148, make sure you subscribe, let us know what you think, leave a comment, thumbs up, whatever you got to do, and make sure that you help guide the direction of the channel, because we want to hear from you. So let's talk about Ultimates #1 and what happened last time and where we're going from here. So if you're up on the Ultimates, you know that after last year's Ultimate Invasion, the Maker was trapped in the city for 2 years. Is the way the clock is ticking down. It's not quite clear exactly how that worked out, but that's the way it worked out. And when Tony Stark stepped up as Iron Lad to try and put an end to the Maker's Council, which is a cabal of supervillains who are ruling the world, they decided to sort of sidetrack and misdirect the public away from whatever Tony Stark was doing by launching an attack on New York City and blaming the Starks for it. So essentially, the Ultimates have now come from a deficit by being labeled as terrorists. And the cabal is working behind the scenes to manipulate the media and public attention and everything else away from them. So that brings us to now. During that Ultimate Invasion event, there was a time travel blip. And so we have Tony Stark with Doom, Sif from the Asgardians with a very gravely injured Thor who escaped his prison from Asgard, and Captain America trapped in ice, all in this one hidden satellite location in orbit. They have jumped forward in time 6 months, so they got past a lot of the manhunt and rigmarole, and now they're in orbit trying to figure out what to do next. As simple as it sounds, Stark and Doom do exactly what you probably wouldn't have expected. They break out a chalkboard and they just start sketching out math and plans to figure out what's the plan of attack here. What are we going to do? And they figure, well, okay, the Maker manipulated this universe and created it with the idea of stopping all the heroes from their origin stories. And we have time travel capabilities, but we can only go back to the 6 months from the time we started using it, because the Maker's temporal barriers are in place, whatever that means. So what we're going to do is we're going to create these, we're going to come up with a plan that's going to help all the origin stories re-instantiate themselves with these devices we call origin boxes. If you're reading up on Ultimate Spider-Man, you've already seen one in action. And the idea is to help all the heroes either recreate themselves as heroes from ordinary citizens, or put the mechanism in place to make that happen, with effectively creating a world of heroes who will be ready to fight as soon as the Maker gets out of his prison, which is 18 months from now. While they're working on their plans and the math and all the mechanisms to make the origin stories reinstantiate themselves, Cap thaws out of the ice and he now joins the team. Now he freaks out after he's been told that he's been in suspended animation for 70 plus years, but eventually he settles down, he joins the team, and then he sort of gets in on the strategy sessions about how they're going to bring all the origin stories back. And he says, your plan is not going to work, because you can't just give people powers. You can't just make these things happen. If you're going to stage a revolution, and that's really what this is, it's a revolution against the Maker, you have to start with the people. You have to give them something to believe in. And of course, Stark and Doom don't listen. They say our math is impeccable. Of course this is going to work. They send the origin boxes back in time to try and meet all the people where they are, give them their origin stories, and hopefully all the heroes would come about. And then when it's all done, nothing happens. And it turns out Cap was exactly right. Except for one or two individuals like Ultimate Spider-Man, the heroes didn't come to life. They have to be met at a people level rather than a powers level. So Stark, Doom, and Cap go back to the drawing board literally by busting out the chalkboard, scratching out Ultimates 1.0, and starting with Ultimates 2.0. Then the story shifts to Hank Pym and Janet Van Dyne, who are a husband and wife team who run an exterminator business. They've been called into a restaurant, and the landlord says, I got some pests in the basement. You got to get rid of these guys. They go down in the basement and investigate, and what they find is a small family of moloids are eating some of the food, and they're so like, we're out of here. There's no way I'm going to exterminate moloids. These are sentient beings with a culture and society. That's not the kind of exterminators we are, so forget you, we're out of here. And they drive away. Unfortunately, their van gets stopped very viciously and brutally because by Thor, who's now starting to recover a little bit, and the Ultimates have now gathered around Janet and Hank to say, hey, look, you're one of the heroes we need. We know you. We sent you the device 6 months ago. We need you to step up and become the heroes we need you to be. Janet, for her part, has no idea what the Ultimates are talking about. Hank, however, does, because he's been suffering from strange dreams about ants and memory problems because of a head injury that happened not too long ago. But all of this is coming sort of all bubbling up to the surface, and Janet is starting to kind of get the impression that she was meant for more. And as they're chit-chatting, Captain Britain shows up, who is now a member of this evil cabal ruling the planet, with his Black Crusade squadron, and they attack. Janet Van Dyne has no qualms about becoming a hero because she all of a sudden feels the pull of who she was meant to be. She grabs the origin box, activates it for herself, and she becomes the Wasp, and she jumps right into battle. Hank, on the other hand, is struggling because those memories that have been bubbling up from his multiversal versions all give him an insight into what Hank Pym was in other worlds, including Earth 616. He knows that Hank has made poor choices. He knows that Hank has hurt people, whether intentionally or unintentionally, and he's deathly afraid that if he embraces the persona of Ant-Man and also Giant Man, that he could wind up the same as that the other Hanks that have made terrible decisions. But ultimately, he decides that he's got to grasp his destiny. He's got to become the person he needs to be. He converts into Giant Man, and he squashes Captain Britain and his squadron of the Black Crusade, which now the team is mostly fully formed, with Ant-Man and the Wasp joining the crew. That's the story in a nutshell. Let's talk about what we liked about Ultimates number 1. If the description wasn't clear enough, it gives you all the meat and potatoes you need for a new reader jumping into the Ultimates universe to understand what does the Ultimates universe look like, who's in it, what's going on, who are the heroes, what are they trying to accomplish, what's the sense of urgency or not, what are the stakes. It's all right there. Camp does a great job of giving you a very thorough breakdown of the current scenario and laying out the timeline and setting all the players in the right places and getting you the setup that you need to get really grounded in the story. As a matter of fact, it's so thorough that if you skipped last year's Ultimate Invasion, you could probably pick this up and be perfectly okay, with the exclusion of understanding exactly how the Maker got trapped in a dome, which honestly, if you read Ultimate Invasion, you probably still don't know how that worked because it wasn't clear at all. It was terrible, the way it was set up, and also give you an idea of why there was an attack on New York City, which was kind of described, but not really well. But excluding those 2 points, this gives you everything you need to jump on board with the Ultimate Universe and figure out what's going on from here. So what did we like about Ultimates number 1? This is going to sound like those woo-woo X Factor, vague and nebulous kind of things, not Mutant X Factor. I'm talking about X Factor. The issue lacks oomph. There's no wow factor. There's no sense of thrill or excitement that kind of draws you in and says, oh, I need to know what happens next. What's really missing is an emotional hook of some sort to get you to care about the characters and to get invested in what happens to them next. Except for there was a brief outburst from Cap when he sort of learned what happened to him after being in suspended animation. He freaks out, but that lasts like 2 panels. There's not much to it. And this is the difference between an okay writer that gives you the technically proficient basics of what a script needs to have just to give you effectively a structured story versus a story that you can believe in, a story that's memorable. Honestly, this reads like what you would call a recap inside of a high school history book. there's no drama to it. There's no investment to it. It's technically it's a story, but it's the difference between what an okay writer gives you that's just forgettable versus what a great writer will give you that makes you stand up and take notice. This has none of that. It is emotionally flat. Let's switch gears and talk about the art. For Gary's art style is rock solid. Lines are clean. The hero poses look good. The overall action, there's very little action to speak of, but the little bit of action that we do get looks good. And then you have Federico Blee's coloring on point. It's visually speaking, it's a very good presentation of what a comic should look like. The suit designs, which are slightly modified to match the ultimate version of the universe, are interesting, and you're overall just visually pleased with the presentation. I would even wager that for Gary's art style for this comic is better than what Brian Hitch did on Ultimate Invasion last year. So I think for Gary was a good choice, and they should stick with him. Final thoughts. What do we think about the Ultimates #1 from Marvel Comics? It's a perfectly serviceable introduction to get readers on board with the new version of the Ultimates universe created by Jonathan Hickman. You get to understand the heroes, their mission, the stakes, understand the timeline, and there's a ticking clock, which is good. Plus, for Gary's art is rock solid, and Camp's script is technically thoroughly proficient. It doesn't sound like a compliment, because it kind of isn't. It gives you the beats of what you need from an information perspective, but where Camp's script falls short is there are no emotional beats. There's no reason to get invested in these characters as individuals you care about. And when you have no emotional depth to the story, it becomes just a checklist, which makes it forgettable. It's okay, but it's just not anything that's going to stick with you. Therefore, we're going to give the Ultimates #1 from Marvel Comics a 6.5 out of 10. What do you think about this? If you are convinced that you must pick up the Ultimates and you think this is still going to be the book of the week, give us a thumbs up. Let us know. If you think this review has changed your mind, or just hearing what you're hearing, that you're less inclined to pick up the Ultimates, or you're just not even going to bother, leave a comment. Let us know what you think. Otherwise, thank you very much. Please stay tuned through the outro for the next review.